time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like, their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence, so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals. Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, the one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Part 2 about how my neighbors killed my dog. So like I said, my brother let the dog out, and my dog got the piece of plywood off of the door. And my brother had to crawl through the doggy door to get my dog out of our neighbor's yard, so that way our neighbors wouldn't wake up and know that he got through. But whenever my brother went to go get Gabe, he realized that my neighbors didn't even have a piece of plywood on their side of the fence or anything. So my brother told my dad, and my dad went over there the next day to talk to them. And he pretty much said, I'm not going to have a piece of plywood on my side of the fence if you're not going to be doing anything on yours to prevent my dog from going into your yard. And they were like, oh, well, your old neighbors never took out the doggy door. And my dad was like, that's not our fault. Well, then our new neighbors said, if your dog all of a sudden becomes sick or just does not come back, don't be surprised. My dad decided to replace the door himself. Well, once Gabe realized that the doggy door was gone, when we would let him outside, he would literally just sit there and bark at the fence. Well, 2 weeks later, Gabe ended up passing away, and we found out it's because our neighbors were giving him rat poison.
Story time. So one day during the summer, I was having my birthday party at my lake house with some of my friends. We had just gotten a brand new tube, and my dad offered to take us out on it. It only had 2 people, and my best friend, let's call her Piper, went on it with me. While we were out there, it started to get super choppy and stormy outside. I yelled at my dad to turn around and go back to the house, but he couldn't hear me over the motor. Finally, when he noticed that it was getting super choppy, he took a super sharp turn. The turn was too sharp and the rope flew underneath the motor. I flew up and hit the water. Then the tube went over me and I couldn't breathe. Like for part 2. Tubing story part 2. So I was stuck underneath the tube and I couldn't breathe. Finally, I kicked my way out. When I looked around me, I could just see water in the tube. I couldn't see Piper. I yelled her name, but then saw her. She was underwater underneath the tube, too. I grabbed her. After she took some time to calm down, I looked around for my dad. I couldn't see him anywhere. Finally, I saw him. He was trying to move the jet ski, but he couldn't because the rope was stuck in the motor. My dad had contacted my mom to come out and get us. We waited out there for a few minutes, and finally, I saw my mom coming. All my friends were on the boat. And I was super embarrassed because we were both sitting there crying our eyes out. Finally, we got saved and everything was okay. Also, thank you so much for 9,000 followers. I'm so happy for all of you. Thank you.
This is why you have to pay attention to your kids and what they put in their pockets. So, about 3 years ago, my little girl was just a toddler. And we were at the park, and I noticed there were some people like in the background, like taking pictures or something, but I really didn't pay attention. An hour later passed, we decided to take a walk with my kid, and my daughter's running. And then, and so we're walking right behind her, and then she finds something, and she puts it in her pocket, and I go, what did you find, Mama? She's like, oh, and she like puts it in her box. I'm like, I'll check later. Well, like 30 minutes later, I see this lady crying, and she's like sobbing, and they're like looking for something like crazy. This is part 2 of why you should always check your kids' pockets. So as you know, I'm talking to the lady that's crying, and I said, ma'am, are you okay? And then she tells me, oh, I lost something that's really precious to me. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, what is it? We're going to help you find it. And she tells me that when she was a kid, her parents died in a car accident, and she was put up for adoption. And the only thing she had of her parents was a small picture, and that she had lost it. And I said, well, we're going to help you find it. So as I'm looking for it with my kid, my little girl pulled out my shirt and said, Mommy, she looks like her. And then I said, what are you talking about, Mama? She goes, Mommy, she looks like the lady I know. And I said, I don't know, what are you talking about? This is part 3 of why you should always check your kids' pockets. So at this point, my little girl is telling me that she knows her. And I tell her, baby, where have you seen her? She's like, Mama, I know her. And then I remembered that she had put something in her pocket. And I said, baby, can I see what's in your pocket? And she's like, yeah. And then she puts her little hand in her pocket and she takes out like a square. And then I say, baby, what is that? And she gives it to me. I flip it over and I look at it. And I see that there's a woman that looks exactly like the lady that's crying. And so I tell the lady, hey, is this yours? She looks at it and she's like, oh my God, it is my, thank you so much. And then my little girl goes, you look so beautiful in that picture. And the lady smiles and says, thank you so much. That's my mom. And the lesson that I learned is always check your kids' pockets because they put the craziest things in there.
Story time about how I got catfished by my best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My now ex-best friend and I hung out almost every single day. We were super close. Let's call her Natalie. Natalie and I would sometimes get into drama and her mom didn't like this. She considered me a bad influence on Natalie. But honestly, the drama was coming from both sides. Natalie and I had a group chat with one other person. One day, Natalie sends me a message through the group chat saying that she couldn't be my best friend anymore and that she's really sorry. She really didn't explain why though. I was crushed. She had been my best friend for so long. 3 weeks ago, I noticed that someone added me on Snapchat by search. I didn't really think too much about it. I added them back and we started having a conversation. She was a young girl my age and we started having conversations about boys we had crushes on, school, and lots of other things. I asked her to send me a picture of herself and she said she couldn't. That should have been the first red flag. Then we decided to meet up at the mall. I'm at the mall waiting for this girl to show up, but she never does. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Like I said before, this girl told me she couldn't send me any pictures, so I didn't even know what she looked like. That's when I started suspecting something. We got along so well in our Snapchat conversations, it was almost too good to be true. So of course, I decide to call her. And guess who answers? Natalie, with her new friends who she knows that I hate. At that moment, I realized that she dumped me and then got with these new girls that she knew I hated. Of course, I was furious. I wanted to say something, but before I could, Natalie hung up the phone. And of course she did. She knew I was going to go off on her. Well, I start calling Natalie's phone several times, and she doesn't answer. Then I see that she unadded me off Snapchat and blocked me. So now I have no way of getting in contact with her. I spent weeks talking to this girl only to find out it was my ex-best friend catfishing me. So of course, I drive all the way to Natalie's house and her mom answers. Part 3 is so I show up to my ex-best friend's house who's been catfishing me for weeks. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Her mom was not happy to see me. Like I mentioned before, Natalie's mom thought I was a bad influence on her because we always got into drama. I proceed to tell Natalie's mom everything in detail. Her mom was shocked. She couldn't believe that her little daughter would be capable of such a thing. She was so mad, and it was so satisfying to me. I leave Natalie's house and I go home. The next day, I see that all of Natalie's new friends are posting on their social media saying that Natalie's phone got taken away for a few months, and that whoever did it, F you. I know they know it's me. It turns out Natalie's mom took her phone away for a whole month and deleted all of her social media. She totally deserves it. Natalie and her new friends are in a different school. And here's the kicker, I'm going to be going to the same school.